In this CBT Nugget, we're going to talk a little bit more about planning for security with split permissions. Man, that sounds painful. Oh boy, but it isn't. It's all about how your company chooses to manage its Active Directory versus its Exchange, and we have some options here so that you can control it. So let's take a look at what we're going to take a look at. So here's what we're gonna talk about, partner. That's my best John Wayne, by the way. We're going to look at shared versus split permissions. Sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? Yeah, it really does. Well, here, the default in Exchange is shared permissions. This lets us, well, you may have noticed from the Exchange side in our Exchange tools, we've been able to manage also Active Directory stuff. That's shared. But for your company, that may not work well, and so we want to show you why you might want to use split permissions. Now there's two ways we'll be able to do split permissions, and oh, I know you see that nasty word there, that RBAC word, but RBAC split permissions is one way to do it, and to be honest with you, that's my preferred way. It really is. It's easy enough to do, and it's easy enough to change later, and yeah. However, some companies are going to require, maybe for a lot of reasons, compliance and so forth, a much, well, let's call it a stronger split. And so we could do that with Active Directory split permissions. So, well, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and start off with this idea of what shared versus split permissions actually is. So this isn't too difficult of a concept. As a matter of fact, I think you will find that this makes a whole lot of sense. Think about this. It used to be one of the kind of great jokes I had when Exchange 2007, 2010, all that were coming out, and in Exchange I can create Active Directory objects. That's basically what it is. I can use something like new-mailbox. I can make a new mailbox. I can create a new user and set some of the properties on that user object. In other words, I can at the same place and time do both sides to the equation, Active Directory objects and the Exchange setup. Now, if you came from prior versions of Exchange, like 2003, Exchange has separate stuff from Active Directory. And in 2003, it was just the opposite. If you were on the AD side, you had management tools that would let you create like Exchange mailboxes. Well, that got reversed to where if you're on the Exchange side, you get the tools to make everything, both Active Directory and Exchange stuff, because it kind of makes sense. If I'm going to make a mailbox for a new user, I need to be able to make a new Active Directory, account for that user, the whole kit and caboodle, maybe set a password for them. So it kind of makes sense that today we're managing it all from the Exchange side. We've got powerful commandlets, a great graphical now in 2013. So it works out for the best for everybody in small and medium-sized companies that it works out for. And here's what I mean. If you have multiple administrative teams, a lot of small and medium-sized companies, their administrative team is responsible for, and this is probably the situation you might be in, they're responsible for both managing Active Directory and Exchange. So it makes sense that we have what we refer to as these shared permissions. And it all works out for us. I mean, our tools work well, life is good. Some companies, though, don't like that. As a matter of fact, they want to have a split in between these permissions. And these are usually your larger size companies, so that are going to want to split because they have a team, an admin team for Active Directory and an admin team that works on Exchange. And what they don't want is the two of them stepping on each other. In other words, the AD people may be the ones responsible for creating new accounts. They don't want the Exchange people making new accounts. And so we would like to split those permissions. Now think about this concept overall, because you also might be in a situation very similar to this where you have separate administrative teams, and this may have been an argument in the past. So starting in Exchange 2010, you could do the split permissions, and here's the idea with the split permissions. We've got two ways of doing this. We've got what I think is the easiest, but it is not a complete split. Its first way is by doing it with RBAC, split permissions. In other words, what we're going to do is we're going to modify RBAC permissions in Exchange to remove the capabilities we have to manage Active Directory objects, to create them. This is very simple. It also means that I can repair this if I need to change it by adding these RBAC permissions back in. So this is definitely my preferred way, but I need you to think about this. Some companies are going to have, it's not quite compliancy, but they definitely want a separation between these two groups, and they don't want anything to cross between them. Well, we can go hardcore, and that's the way I like to think of it, and that's when we look at Active Directory split permissions. That's pretty hardcore. It also means that some of the other things that you've been accustomed to doing, you won't be able to do in Exchange, and you're going to have an AD person do it. One of the examples I'm going to use is, I don't know if you remember way back when we were doing DAGs. Yeah, DAGs, and we needed to set up a witness. Well, a witness requires that Exchange have some permissions. In fact, I'm going to show this to you. It gets it through the Exchange Trusted Subsystem, where it could configure the share and the permissions needed all by itself without an Active Directory person. Well, if you go to hardcore Active Directory split permissions, you're going to need an Active Directory person help you. In other words, they're going to have to do the permission side of it. So you can see it gets pretty serious. And I think this through, it gets really serious because now you can't do things like new mailbox and remove mailbox commandlets because you won't have permissions for them. So tell you what, let's start off with, well, my preferred, the RBAC way of doing it. Let me show you where you get these permissions from to work with Active Directory, and well, how simple it is to remove those if you want to have split permissions. So here I am at the trusty Exchange Administrative Center. Now you can do all of this with PowerShell, but I was going to show you this graphically. I think it's a little bit easier to understand. I'm going to go to permissions, and I want to show you how you get your permissions. So all of these groups, oh, it's highlighted. Organizational management and like recipient management are like two of the primary role groups where you get the ability to work with Active Directory objects. I want you to think about this. Organizational management is the big overarching, administrative group, and recipient management is where you get to create new users and mailboxes. Well, those obviously work with Active Directory. What I want to do is show you the specific, though, management roles that are allowing you to work with Active Directory. So I'm just going to open up organizational. Oh, don't delete it, don't delete it. Wow, that was close. No, let's go ahead and edit. Yeah, that's why I should stick in PowerShell. I'm going to maximize this and kind of scroll over here. And let me scroll down this list here of the roles. So these are the management roles, and there's a couple of them in here that give you the permissions that are letting you do things with Active Directory. So I'm going to go down here and we're going to find, oh, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Mail, oh, it's right there. Ah, boy. Mail recipient creation, because that role lets you create new recipients. Got it? And there's also one down here, the security group creation and membership. So you modify the groups. So down here, security group, there it is, and membership, that. Well, here's the best part. If you don't want to have access to Active Directory from the Exchange side, all you have to do is remove those. See the minus sign? This is RBAC split permissions. In other words, I'm using RBAC to split the permissions for me. And so members of the role group, organization management, and then you want to go to recipient management and do the same thing. So you got two of them, right? You got organization management and recipient management. You want to make sure those two groups don't exist. Now, I think recipient management only has the create one. But you want to pull those out, and now you've split the permissions. You can't use commandlets now like new mailbox or do things through the graphical like new mailbox where you're creating the user object while you're making the mailbox. So the user object must already exist. You can't remove mailbox, that kind of thing. So you lose control over those commandlets. Now, there is a proper process to do this by, and this is going to be a little bit strange. Before you pull these groups out, there's something you need to think about. Do you want this to apply to all of the people in organization management, which it's going to? And now, right now, it's just the administrator. But you might want to have a role group, and let me close this, that does allow Active Directory management. In other words, you might want to have your own custom role group for AD management. And you can add those roles that I just showed you into this group and then assign members to it. Those one or two people would still have the flexibility from Exchange and to work with Active Directory. So you can control to the extent that you want this to be effective, across your environment. Now, there is a little bit of strangeness here. Something you got to kind of think about a little bit is that you can do the RBAC security, but the proper way to set this up is a little bit weird. You need to make sure, though, before you do this, that Active Directory split permissions is not enabled. So let me show you the process that you would normally go through and how you would think about this, and then we'll actually do the Active Directory split permissions. So first thing is, the proper way to go through this, let me go to my domain controller. The reason I'm at my domain controller is twofold. One, I want to show you the proper way to do the RBAC security, but I also want to give you kind of a tour here for a second. When you do the RBAC split permissions, one of the things that's not getting removed, and I want to show this to you, under the Exchange security groups, there's this thing called Exchange Windows Permissions. This gives the Exchange servers permissions to do things that require Active Directory. And I want you to see the members of this is the Exchange Trusted Subsystem. We've seen this group before. You'll see it again. It's the only member right now. When you do RBAC security, you don't change this. What that means is that if an Exchange server needs to make modifications to AD, it's okay. Such as when we did the witness setup with a DAG. It's still okay. And if it's okay in your environment for this, great. Then RBAC security is definitely the way to go to split the permissions. So let me just show you kind of more of what the proper way is. The only real reason I'm here at my domain controller is that this happens to be where all of my source files are for Exchange, and I just want to show you something. Where did I put my source files for Exchange? Software. Let's see here. That would be it. Because I want to show you the first step before you start messing with RBAC security. The first step is you got to make sure you verify that Active Directory split permissions has been turned off. Now, if you know that it's never been turned on, okay, it's really easy. All you have to do is remove those particular management roles out of the organizational management role group and out of recipient management. You're good to go. But if you're not sure or if it has been turned on, here's what you do. Let me clear the screen. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to run setup.exe and we're going to do a prepare AD. Now, don't get too nervous here. This prepare AD, we're going to put a switch on it, and this switch is going to tell it that we don't want Active Directory split permissions. Active Directory split. Let's see, split permissions and false. And this will tell it that if it had split permissions, don't do that. Now here in a little bit I'll show you how to do Active Directory split permissions, which now you probably know how to do, and the changes that are made. That's kind of important. So the first thing is make sure you don't have AD split permissions going. Then, and I'll go back to my CAS box, make some decisions here. Do you want to have an admin role that does give a few people the ability to have Active Directory permission access? In which case, create the role and then give them the permissions of those management roles that I was showing you, and I'm going to show you again. So you can do that. Then what you do is you simply go on over to organization management and recipient management, both those. And just like I had shown you, you can go in there and you can edit the roles, the management roles, and go down and get rid of, and I'll show you one more time. There we go. Oh, well, now, see, oh, there we go. I always forget the name of this. Mail recipient creation. You take him out. And down here, the long one. Yeah, that's how I always remember it. It's got membership in it. There you go. Security group creation and membership. You do that for both groups, and there you go. Now, keep in mind, you're going to lose some control over your cmdlets, and you're going to have to think about your management now. How does this affect how you're currently managing through Exchange? Because if you're currently doing a lot of stuff that affects Active Directory, yeah, that could be a big deal. So make sure you think through the management aspects of this and what's going to happen when you do this. Well, okay, cool. Notice that I haven't actually done the RBAC security because I want to show you how to do Active Directory split permissions. Okay, big warning right up front. Only do what I'm about to show you if you absolutely must do it this way. This is the Active Directory split permissions, and you really have to think through your management because this is really going to affect it, and there's all kinds of caveats with this. So I want to show you how to set up Active Directory split permissions, show you some of the changes that it makes, and, well, there you go. So you're going to want to probably go through this in a test environment and test to make sure of the end results you're going to get. So if you are in an environment where you've got an Active Directory team and a separate Exchange team and you must split the permissions, here's what you do. You run a prepare AD and you tell it to do an Active Directory split permissions. So, and I closed my PowerShell window, so I got to navigate back out to my software. What was it? Was it Exchange? There it goes. And so I'm going to type this in for you. Setup inst.exe/prepare AD and Active Directory. I'm trying to make sure I spell this stuff right. You know how hard that is for me, right? Permissions. And permissions : true. Oh, you see what I did? Did you see what I did? I'm in PowerShell, not the old-fashioned command line. So remember, if you're using PowerShell, you have to tell us the location of the executable, which is // because I'm sitting in the same location as the folder. And ta-da! Well, not ta-da, because the next thing is and yes, I'm trying to remind you of this. Every single time you run setup, you must I accept the Exchange Server license terms. So let's do this. I accept Exchange Server license terms. This is the one thing that I've gotten really good at spelling really well. So now it'll go through and it'll set up for my Active Directory split permissions. Now when it's done, I want you to see a couple of changes here that it made. So I'm going to give him a minute to finish, and we will come right back and we'll go back into the ECP. Or no, actually I'm going to come right back here to the domain controller, I think. Hang on one second. So the prepare AD finished. It actually only takes it a couple of minutes to run. I just didn't want to make you have to wait for it. It's finished, and I want you to see the changes now that have happened with Active Directory split permissions. I'm going to go back out to Active Directory users and computers. Let me go ahead and minimize him. And I'm going to hit refresh. Well, let's go up here and hit refresh because things will have changed. And so I want you to see the Microsoft Exchange security groups. Do you remember that Exchange Windows group? It's now gone. And so the assignment of the Exchange Trusted Subsystem is gone as well. But I do have this one, the Exchange Protected Groups and Exchange Permissions, if I need to give permissions back in. So, but that group got changed and removed. And here, let me show you real quick on the CASBox. You know, when we were out at permissions, and I was saying if you had done this as RBAC security, you know, you could have removed it out of the groups. Let's go into organization management. And let me just show you. Look at the management roles here. What I'm looking for is the mail recipient creation. So we'll go down here. There's a mail recipient that I usually find. There. Notice mail recipient creation's gone. And the other one that we had in there before was security group creation and membership. That was the long one. And it's not where it's gone. It's gone. So it's made the changes for me, and now it's separated. It's separated now all of between the management between it separates the management between Active Directory and Exchange. Boy, my whole brain just locked up there for a second. So now you've kind of hardcore isolated this. Again, very important. make sure. If you're doing this, this is a, as you can tell, this is a big change. Okay, we ran Prepare AD on this. It made the adjustments for me, but this is a big change, and so this will affect how your management teams manage. And when you run into an issue, the troubleshooting issue may be as simple as you ain't got the permissions to it. So be careful with the Active Directory split permissions. Well, let's kind of take a look at what we took a look at. Depending upon your particular corporate needs, you can adjust how permissions are managed in Exchange and Active Directory. Again, the default is that shared permissions, and I prefer, if at all possible, to stay shared permissions. It just makes your life easier all the way around. You might forget about the permission setup and run into some troubleshooting issues that aren't really troubleshooting issues. It's just you ain't got permissions for it, and somebody with the Active Directory permissions is required. However, some companies do need this capability to separate the Active Directory folks that are managing Active Directory from like you and me that are managing Exchange. So, and there were two ways to do this. My preferred one, simply because it's, well, simple. It's simple to set it up this way, and it is easy to change back. Also, one of the key things is that you can create your own custom role group for this that does have those Active Directory permissions, so maybe one person has the ability. And so I like the RBAC split permissions. Now the Active Directory split permissions, yeah, that's pretty hardcore. That's when we're basically telling Active Directory we're going to separate this. And you saw the changes that it made. It definitely made the changes. This is the hardest to implement in the sense that it was easy for us to do it, but the hardest to plan for, because now you've got to be aware that, well, you can't be modifying the Active Directory stuff. A lot of the commandlets you're using, all the new mailbox, remove mailbox, that kind of stuff can run into issues. Also, that Exchange Trusted Subsystem isn't over there, so that can run into issues and cause you problems as well. They're not really issues, they're problems, but they're problems of permissions because you've separated the permissions. This is kind of an uncomfortable position for an Exchange guy to be in because that's not normally what we are accustomed to. However, there are companies that do require this. So you can do it too, and you can certainly, plan for it and handle this. I always recommend, especially in a test environment, to test, and test to make sure you have all of the capabilities or how those capabilities are now going to work. Well, we've had a couple of planning for security videos. That's excellent. And, we did the RBAC security, and now we've done, the split permissions. It's one of those, I hope that this video has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.